Israel continues to root out the savage and evil forces of Hamas hiding in Gaza. The Hamas terrorists who murdered over 1,200 innocent Israeli civilians on October the 7th continue their cowardly evasion by hiding underneath hospitals, schools, and civilian homes. And while they shiver with fear in their hidey holes, they put the people of Gaza between them and Israeli soldiers. Hamas and their Iranian funders care not one whit about the so-called Palestinians. In fact, these uncivilized tools of Satan willfully hope that there will be massive deaths of children and civilians. That way they can pretend that Israel is to blame for the carnage that has ravaged Gaza. But Israel would have never gone into Gaza had they not been attacked in an unprovoked slaughter by Hamas, who inflicted the most disgusting and despicable death and destruction possible on the Jews who were waking up on the holy day of Shabbat. It's truly tragic that innocent children and non-combatants have been killed, both in Israel and in Gaza. But the blood of those killed is solely on the hands of the demonic and deranged thugs who went beyond murdering Jews to gleefully celebrating the mutilation of the bodies and even the babies, and then sending photos of their monstrous crimes to their families back in Gaza, who joined the celebration by coming over to Israeli villages to loot what was left of the homes of Jewish families who'd been slaughtered in cold blood. The further we get from the shock of the vicious attack and hostage-taking on October the 7th, the more the rest of the world wants to just forget what happened and then pressure Israel to walk away, stop the efforts to root out the last vestige of Hamas, and then sit back and wait for another attack. Let's never forget that Israel has tried to create a peaceful environment since its reestablishment in 1948. From day one, it's been attacked by its neighbors who sought repeatedly to annihilate Israel. In 1948, again in 1956, again in 1967, and in 1973, major wars were unleashed on Israel. Israel has been able to win every time it's been attacked, but not without the cost of the blood of its sons and daughters. Most of the Muslim-led nations of the Middle East have come to recognize that Israel is not interested in taking the land away from the Egyptians or the Emiratis, the Saudis, or the Jordanians. They simply want the tiny sliver of land that was originally given directly by God to Abraham, which today represents 1/644th of the landmass controlled by Muslim-led countries. And when you hear Joe Biden or Anthony Blinken or sympathizers of the so-called Palestinians speak of a two-state solution, they might as well be talking the kind of gibberish that we're used to hearing from President Biden. But to be fair, Republican presidents have joined Democrat presidents in the nonsense of thinking that it's realistic, much less workable, to demand that Israel move their God-given borders so their enemies can get even closer and even share the same real estate. I mean, it's hard enough to get an Alabama fan to live next door to an Auburn fan, for heaven's sakes. Palestinian children are taught from the time they're 5 or 6 years old to hate Jews. They're taught that when they grow up, killing a Jew is their highest calling of life. When a Palestinian kills a Jew, their families are given a pension for life. And they even have streets named for them. When Israel gave away mass amounts of what little bit of land they had in order to achieve peace, they got no peace, but they did get more of their citizens murdered by terrorist attacks and suicide bombers. The so-called Palestinians have violated every single agreement they signed, whether the disastrous Oslo Accords of 1993 or their ill-advised complete pullout from Gaza in 2005, when 10,000 Israeli citizens were forcibly removed from their homes in order to give all of Gaza to the Palestinians, who then promptly voted to turn it over to the Iran-backed butchers of Hamas. Israel doesn't just have the right, Israel has the responsibility to root out the last living Hamas soldier. The tragedy of civilian death and suffering in Gaza will end only when the people there stop hiding and protecting Hamas, and when Hamas finally releases every last one of the hostages that it took on October the 7th, including some American citizens who are still being held hostage. But let's stop the insanity of calling for a two-state solution. And instead, why don't we insist on a biblical solution where Israel gets the land that it has had a title deed to for 3,500 years? And then the rest of the world should stand with Israel to create a safe and secure home for the Jewish people. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I hope you will now. The button is just below this video, and there's a little bell next to it. If you click on those, YouTube will reluctantly start letting you know when we've got a new video uploaded.